Before I dive into this, I want to say something to whoever's listening or reading. You know those moments in life when you think you are safe? When you truly believe you are building something that will last forever. That was me, Olivia Carter. I was one of those people who genuinely thought I had chosen well, that I had picked the right partner, that the universe had smiled on me. I used to look at other people's messy relationships and think, that could never be me. I am too careful. I am too loyal. I am too smart. I thought I could spot betrayal from a mile away. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just arrive like a storm you can see on the horizon. It seeps in quietly, like water under a door you did not know was cracked open. And by the time you notice, the whole room is flooded. I am 32 years old, and if you had asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have told you I was happily married to the love of my life, living in a modest but cozy two-bedroom house in Raleigh, North Carolina. We had dreams of maybe starting a family soon. I had been with Ethan, 35, for 6 years, married for 4. He worked as an account manager for a marketing firm downtown, pulling in just over $90,000 a year. I was a middle school teacher making about $48,000. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. I budgeted. He spent a little too freely, but I always reined things in. We still had date nights twice a month, a yearly road trip, and enough saved to replace appliances without panic. I have always been the responsible one. Growing up, my parents ran a small diner, and from the time I was 12, I helped after school, learned how to manage orders, cash, and people. I worked part-time jobs through college and never once carried a credit card balance. Ethan used to admire that about me. He would laugh and tell people, "She's the one who keeps us afloat," especially after I quietly fixed our finances following one of his impulsive purchases. He was more of a live now, figure it out later type. In the beginning, that impulsiveness felt exciting. It was part of the package I thought I had signed up for. We met at my cousin's 4th of July barbecue. I was standing at the grill table, wrestling with a stubborn ketchup bottle, when this tall, broad-shouldered man with ocean blue eyes and a crooked grin strolled over. Without missing a beat, he said, "Want me to open that, or should I just take you to dinner instead?" It was our 4th wedding anniversary was approaching, and I decided to do something special. I left work early, drove an hour to a small craft brewery in Durham to get his favorite beer, picked up sushi from the little hole-in-the-wall spot we used to visit when we were broke, and bought him a leather watch I had been saving for over 3 months to afford. The whole evening cost around $180, which was a decent chunk for us, but I wanted to remind him we were still us. When I pulled up to his office, I saw him through the large glass lobby windows. He was not alone. She was tall, brunette, dressed in a sleek pencil skirt and blouse, laughing like she had just heard the funniest thing in the world. And then Ethan leaned in and kissed her. It was not a polite, friendly kiss. It was slow, familiar, hands on her waist like they had done it many times before. I froze. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might collapse right there on the sidewalk. Someone brushed past me, muttering, "Watch it, lady," but I barely registered it. The sushi bag tilted, soy sauce leaked onto my sleeve, and I just stood there, staring at the man I thought I knew. That night, he came home late, kissed my forehead, and mumbled something about having a crazy day at work. I smiled and told him I had to throw the sushi out because it went bad. Inside, I was already planning my next move. It did not take long to find her. Claire Bennett, 30 years old, junior project manager at his firm. I found her Instagram, and there she was, not just pictures of her alone, but dozens of cozy couple shots with a man named Jake, 33, her boyfriend. I sent Jake a message, "We need to talk. I think your girlfriend is cheating on you with my husband." We met at a Starbucks near his apartment. He looked tired, like someone who had been carrying suspicion for a while. I showed him the blurry photo I had taken through the office window. He exhaled and leaned back, saying, "Let's burn them both to the ground." We started small. Jake sent Claire one sent on Venmo with a note, "Hope Ethan's worth it." I sent Ethan a cake at work that read, "Congrats on your promotion." A promotion he never got. His boss saw it. The awkward conversation he must have had was pure gold. Then we escalated. I signed Ethan's work email up for parrot breeder newsletters, conspiracy theory forums, and knitting clubs. Jake accidentally shared a folder of photos of Claire and Ethan kissing in a private Facebook group that included her mother, sister, and several coworkers. I timed things so Ethan would find divorce papers in his desk drawer at the same moment. By lunchtime that day, their personal and professional lives were unraveling at full speed. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Jake and I began talking about more than revenge. We told each other stories about growing up, shared our favorite shows, confessed the dreams we had shelved, his dream of running a barbecue food truck, my half-finished novel sitting untouched for years. One night, after a victory drink to celebrate another petty win, he walked me to my door. The porch light flickered, the summer air was warm, and when he kissed me, it was not about revenge. It was slow, soft, and felt like something I had not felt in a long time, genuine connection. 2 weeks later, Ethan moved out, and Claire vanished from social media. 3 months after D-Day, life had settled into something that finally felt like mine again. The chaos had burned itself out, the legal paperwork was done, and the dust had settled in a way that was both sobering and oddly freeing. Ethan had been stripped from every corner of my daily routine, no toothbrush by the sink, no hoodie hanging on the back of the chair, no half-drunk cans of energy drink cluttering my fridge. The silence in the house was different now. At first, it had been deafening, like the echo of a slammed door. But over time, it became peaceful. By then, the divorce was finalized. I had kept the house, my pension was locked down tight, and because my income was significantly lower, Ethan was legally obligated to send me $900 a month in spousal support for the next year and a half. The day that first deposit hit my account, I opened a brand new savings account and nicknamed it Freedom Fund. Watching the balance grow every month was like seeing physical proof that I was moving further and further from the wreckage he left behind. The funny thing was, Ethan had never really grasped how much I had been holding our financial life together. For years, I had been quietly patching holes in the budget, moving money around, and covering the consequences of his impulsive, I'll figure it out later, purchases. Without me there to triage the damage, his financial reality came crashing in fast. Through a mutual friend, I learned he had already maxed out one of his credit cards, traded in his car for something cheaper, and was renting a one-bedroom apartment with beige carpet, peeling paint, and a dishwasher that hadn't worked since he moved in. The same man who once spent an entire paycheck on concert tickets and a weekend getaway was now living with a laundry basket in the corner because he couldn't afford a proper dresser. One Friday night, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't need saved to recognize. The preview on the lock screen showed that it was a novel-length wall of text, so long it had split into 2 separate messages. I didn't even have to open it to know the tone. From what he told me, she had leaned heavily on the same script Ethan had, nostalgic lines about their history, how they could make it work, how it didn't have to end like this. But Jake, like me, had no interest in rewinding the tape. He told me she seemed almost offended that he wouldn't at least consider it, as though she had assumed she could keep him as a fallback. It was oddly satisfying knowing she'd miscalculated just as badly as Ethan had. In the meantime, Jake and I had been quietly building something of our own. It wasn't some whirlwind romance designed to prove a point. There were no over-the-top gestures, no desperate attempts to define anything. It was slower than that, steadier. We cooked simple dinners together, sometimes at his place, sometimes at mine. We went for walks around the neighborhood, taking a long route just to talk more. We swapped book recommendations, tried new recipes, and occasionally went out for drinks, not the kind of nights where you wake up with a hangover and regret, but the kind where you end up laughing until your stomach hurts. The conversations had shifted. In the early days, they had been heavy with the aftermath, both of us dissecting the mess our exes had left behind. But now, they were about completely different things, music we loved, weird childhood stories, places we wanted to travel someday. It was refreshing to talk to someone without feeling like I had to walk around emotional landmines. My home began to feel warmer, more mine than it had in years. I rearranged the living room, painted over the muted gray Ethan had insisted on with a deep, rich green that I'd always wanted. I planted herbs in the kitchen window. I hung up art I loved without asking for anyone else's opinion. The house stopped being the place I'd shared with someone who betrayed me and became the place where I was rebuilding from the ground up. Every so often, I would think about how different things might have been if I hadn't decided to go to his office that day. How much longer I might have stayed in the dark, still patching up finances and excuses, still ignoring the way the connection between us had been thinning like a worn-out rope. But those thoughts didn't sting anymore. They just reminded me how far I'd come. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. I wasn't just surviving the fallout. I was actually happy. For months after the whole disaster had first cracked my life wide open, I thought I was finally in the clear, emotionally, mentally, and in terms of avoiding awkward run-ins with the ghosts of bad decisions past. Jake and I had found a comfortable rhythm. My house was my own in every sense of the word, and I had even gotten to the point where the sight of Ethan's name in old emails didn't trigger that familiar punch of nausea. Life had settled into something normal, and normal felt good. Then fate decided to remind me that it has a twisted sense of humor. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, the kind where time feels like it's moving half speed. Jake and I had been lounging around, playing fetch with his dog and debating what to make for dinner when we realized we needed a few essentials: paper towels, dog treats, and, in Jake's world, a completely unnecessary scented candle. This time, the winner was something called campfire bourbon, which he claimed smelled like the perfect mix of fall nights and bad decisions. I was dressed in my absolute do-not-perceive-me uniform, baggy gray sweatpants, an oversized hoodie I'd owned since college, hair shoved into a messy bun that was holding on for dear life, and not a trace of makeup. The kind of outfit where you silently pray the universe won't send anyone from your past into your path. We walked into Target, weaving through the weekend crowd, and for a few blissful minutes, it was exactly as uneventful as I wanted it to be. Until I saw them. Claire was pushing a half-empty cart loaded with clearance bin cleaning products, each one screaming with bright orange stickers like they were desperate for attention. She was studying a bottle of off-brand bleach like it held the secrets of the universe. Ethan was trailing behind her, shoulders slouched, looking like someone had just informed him that rent was due tomorrow and his paycheck had been delayed. His hair had grown out, but not in a romantic, windswept way, more in a haircuts are expensive kind of way. Our eyes met for the briefest second. I watched the recognition register, saw him freeze mid-step, his mouth parting like he might try to say something. Before I could decide whether to give the world's most polite nod or just pretend he was a ghost I couldn't see, Jake, with impeccable timing, leaned in and kissed my cheek. He asked, in a tone so casual it might as well have been scripted, if I felt like grabbing sushi that night. He added a little squeeze to my shoulder for good measure, like this was just another Sunday for us, which, of course, it was. Claire's hand stopped halfway through reaching for the bleach. Ethan's face flushed the exact shade of steamed shrimp, his jaw clenching as if he could grind the moment into nothingness through sheer force. I didn't slow down. I didn't break stride. The mental image of them bickering in the cleaning aisle over who ruined whose life was enough to keep me grinning for the rest of the day. But I wasn't done. Later that week, nostalgia for my early petty revenge days hit me. I remembered how satisfying it had been to watch Ethan squirm in small, indirect ways. So, I got to work. I found a website that allowed you to sign someone up for dozens of email newsletters at once, all with just a few clicks. Ethan's work email became the proud recipient of everything under the sun related to Cheaters Anonymous. Weekly inspirational quotes about honesty, offers for online fidelity counseling, and endless articles titled things like "How to Rebuild Trust When You've Blown It" started flooding his inbox. I imagined him opening his laptop at work, coffee in hand, only to be greeted by subject lines that were essentially neon signs flashing his mistakes back at him. I don't know if he's still getting them. Honestly, I hope he is. Because even if he's too proud to admit it, I know every time one pops up, it takes him straight back to the day he lost everything. And the thought of that? It made me grin every single time I checked my own inbox. Petty? Absolutely. Worth it? Every damn second. By the 6-month mark, Ethan and Claire's little workplace fling had gone from a whispered office rumor to the kind of scandal people brought up over drinks for pure entertainment. The ripple effect was brutal. One of Ethan's old coworkers, let's call her Karen because she collects gossip like it's a competitive sport, filled me in over coffee one Saturday. She claimed the entire HR department had been blindsided when an anonymous email landed in their inbox with a neatly packaged PDF attachment labeled Professional Conduct Concerns. It wasn't just vague accusations. The file contained a curated timeline of Ethan and Claire's private DMs, pulled straight from the company's internal messaging system. And we're not talking casual water cooler chatter. These were time-stamped exchanges during billable hours, things like, wish I could sneak you into the supply closet right now, and counting the minutes until I can get you alone after this budget meeting. There was even one where Ethan complained about having to sit through another boring client call while sitting in that very client's conference room. The fallout was immediate. HR called Claire into what they described as a career-focused conversation, which was corporate speak for resign quietly or we make this public. Karen said Claire kept it together in the meeting, but 2 days later she was gone. Her desk was cleared, her nameplate removed, and the office group chat suddenly went radio silent whenever her name was mentioned. No big goodbye email, no farewell lunch, nothing. Just vanished. Ethan, meanwhile, was watching his own career slide into the dumpster fire. That major client he'd bragged about for months? Gone. Apparently, someone in that company caught wind of his extracurricular activities and decided they didn't want their brand tied to a headline-worthy scandal. When your industry thrives on reputation, being the guy who got caught sexting a coworker during strategy calls is a death sentence. His firm responded with a 20% pay cut, citing concerns about professionalism and public image. Considering his new rent, the car downgrade, and the fact that his credit cards were already screaming for mercy, I'm sure that pay cut stung harder than the actual divorce. While all that chaos unfolded, I was too busy doing something I hadn't done in years, enjoying myself. Jake and I decided to take a week-long coastal road trip with no itinerary. Just a playlist, a map, and a bag of road trip snacks you only buy when you're officially on vacation mode. We wandered down through Wilmington, stopped in Savannah for pecan pie, and ended up in Charleston, South Carolina. Jake insisted we check out this decades-old barbecue shack tucked away behind a gas station. He called it menu research for his dream of opening a food truck, but it was obvious. He just wanted to share one of his happy places with me. We ate pulled pork sandwiches under a canopy of string lights, the kind of sandwiches so messy they required 2 napkins per bite. Sweet tea in cheap plastic cups, the smell of hickory smoke in the air, Jake jotting menu ideas into a weathered leather notebook while smudging sauce across his cheek. It was so far removed from the chaos of the last year that it felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life entirely. Something shifted for me on that trip. For months, I'd been operating in survival mode, running on adrenaline and petty satisfaction over watching Ethan's life unravel. But sitting there, with no rush, no drama, and no one to impress, I realized how much I'd stopped doing the things I loved. That night, in a tiny beachside motel with peeling paint and the faint sound of waves outside, I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then I started to type. Not about betrayal, not about the mess Ethan had made, but about new beginnings. About adventure. About the way life can surprise you when you least expect it. For the first time in a long while, my writing wasn't sharpened by anger, it was softened by something better. They were fueled by hope. 9 months after my marriage had imploded in a blaze of betrayal and paperwork, Jake rolled open the serving window of smoke and honey for the first time. The truck gleamed like a promise, the scent of hickory smoke curling into the crisp morning air while caramelized sauce simmered in the back. The name had been his idea, but the design was mine, bold, unapologetic letters with golden honey dripping in a way that made people's eyes linger just a moment longer. We'd been teasing the launch for weeks on social media, posting slow-motion videos of glistening ribs and behind-the-scenes shots of brisket being sliced so tender it practically fell apart. By the time opening day arrived, there was already a crowd forming before the window even opened. The line snaked down the block, people chatting with strangers as the smell wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Pulled pork sandwiches stacked high, mac and cheese so rich it could make you cry, cornbread still steaming with honey butter melting into every crumb. This wasn't just food, it was an event. I was in the zone at the window, my hands moving automatically between the cash register, drink coolers, and brown paper bags. Jake was in the back, wielding his tongs like an extension of his arm, flipping and slicing meat with that laser focus that made people stop and watch like it was an art form. And then I saw him, Ethan, standing 3 people back in line, pretending to study the chalkboard menu like he was just another curious customer. His hair was shorter now, though uneven, the kind of cut you get when you tell the barber you're in a hurry and don't care how it turns out. His shirt was wrinkled and a little too big, like it had been pulled from the back of a closet without a second thought. He was smaller than I remembered, not physically so much as in presence, like someone had dimmed whatever light he used to carry. When he reached the front, his eyes flicked up to mine for half a second before sliding away, his tone sharp as he muttered that this must be where all his alimony payments were going. I didn't need to respond. Jake stepped forward from the grill with a pulled pork sandwich that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread, the kind of thing people would post on Instagram with hashtags like #foodgoals. He set it on the counter with a smile so polite it was practically a weapon, telling him it was on the house, so at least he'd get something good for his money. Ethan's gaze lingered on it for a moment before he pushed it back, saying to keep it, and walked away without another glance. Watching him disappear into the crowd was like watching a balloon drift until it was just a dot in the distance, smaller and smaller until it vanished entirely. We closed late that night, the last embers dying down in the smoker as Jake and I sat on the back step with our shoes kicked off, sipping champagne from mismatched coffee mugs because we'd forgotten to bring proper glasses. My hair smelled faintly of smoke, my hoodie was stained with barbecue sauce, and my feet ached in the best possible way. But my chest felt light. There was no more bitterness in my laugh, no sharp edge in my happiness. I wasn't standing here because I'd beaten someone. I was here because I'd built something better. That's the thing about revenge. It's intoxicating in the moment, but it fades quickly. Building a life that's yours, one that makes you wake up excited, one where the future feels wide open, that's a kind of satisfaction that lingers long after the smoke clears. Ethan was just a chapter, messy, painful, and necessary to close. Jake is a whole new book, and this time I'm holding the pen. And good riddance.